Hello, you beautiful people. Today I wanted to give you guys 3 tips to help you guys win your fantasy playoffs this season. So this is for category leagues, points leagues, just any sort of format really. I just wanted to give some general advice because while it does seem soon, it is that time of year again. Playoffs are creeping up on us slowly, so before we begin, feel free to like and subscribe for NBA and fantasy content. And also I have a Discord for like the non-casual fantasy players, so if you want to have any discussions, have any trade questions, and want some quicker feedback than I can give, then I definitely join there. I'm pretty active in there as well, but really great community, so I definitely recommend checking that out. And with that being said, let's just jump right into the video. So my first tip is actually one that I think is probably the most important, and it's going to be to trade for competitive players. And you might be wondering what this means, and what I mean by this is we all know when it comes down to like the last few weeks of the season, some players just take it off. I mean, their team's already solidified their position in the standings, and they don't really have anything to play for. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to target guys like Damian Lillard, Sabonis, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, teams that like are fringe playoff contenders. Like they're not solidified top spot. They're not like absolute top team in the West because those are the guys that are going to rest games. Like you want guys that are going to play in the final weeks of the season because those are the games that really matter for fantasy. So if you have guys that aren't on the floor, you're definitely not going to be able to win games, especially if they're your star players. So yeah, I think guys like Dame are really great for this kind of thing just because like Damian Lillard, he's a true competitor. He's always going to play if he's healthy. And the Trailblazers aren't guaranteed a top spot or anything. So I definitely, even if it seems like you're underselling a player to get Damian Lillard or someone of the same sort, like it's just going to be worth it if you think you're going to qualify for the playoffs already. You might as well just start focusing on that final week. You could also say to the contrary, like players that are on teams that are really just not doing well and are tanking. Like if you look at Al Horford on the OKC Thunder, that's a great example for someone I'd just trade away, honestly. Because like when it comes to the end of the season, the Thunder are just gonna use any excuse to shut him down just because like he's a valuable trade asset for them. He doesn't have any like long term plans on their team. They just took the contract so they could get a first round pick. So like I feel like Al Horford's gonna get shut down towards the end of the season. So I definitely try to move him if he's on your team. So yeah, I'll just give some examples of players I would watch for this kind of thing. So in the Eastern Conference, I mean the obvious one is the Brooklyn Nets, like Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. I'd watch out for them getting shut down. And then if we go towards the bottom of the league, some players that I watch for, Bradley Beal's a really good one because the Wizards are going to be competing for a playoff spot. Trae Young on the Hawks is a good one. I already mentioned a few Heat players. And then on the Magic, Nikola Vucevic, great player to trade for. And yeah, the East is somewhat competitive right now. Like a lot of teams are pretty close, especially with the play-in tournament. So you're going to want to take advantage of that and trade for the people that are on the teams that are like competing for a playoff spot, honestly. And if we move over to the Western Conference, then I mean it's pretty competitive in the West this year as well. So like I'm looking from like the 6th spot all the way down to like the 13th spot, honestly. So you got like the Spurs, the Warriors, the Nuggets, the Grizzlies, the Mavericks. Like there's just a lot of teams that are competing for a playoff spot, and I'd obviously try to trade for one of them. And going on to like the antithesis to that is actually something I want to mention as like a 1B part to this tip. So we'll just go ahead and move on to that right now. So while I already kind of touched on this, I really just wanted to drive the point home because I think it's crucial to know if you're going to win your fantasy league this year, but it's going to be to recognize the player resting risks. And what I mean by this is that if you look at teams like the Sixers, the Nets, Milwaukee, the Jazz, the Lakers, and the Clippers, there's a few players on there that are just great injury risks, and these teams are like solidified at the top of their respective conferences, in my opinion, right now. So I wouldn't be surprised at the end of the season if they start getting shut down. I mean, if we look at the Sixers, like we already know the injury history with Joel and Ben Simmons. So I'd definitely be careful trading for them, especially Joel Embiid, because like if they get that top spot secure, I don't see any reason that they're going to play him just because they need to save him for the playoffs, right? So, and then my main one for the West would be Anthony Davis. Like if Anthony Davis is on your team, I would definitely try to trade him away right now, just because like they're not going to be in any rush to get him back from his injury. They're a really good team even when he's not on the floor. So I expect him to rest back to backs. I expect him to take a lot of games off, and especially in those last 2 seasons, like the Lakers are going to finish like with a top 3 spot no matter what, pretty much. So yeah, I definitely try to trade Anthony Davis away just because like it's just not worth it if your main goal is like the fantasy playoffs long run, which it obviously should be. And with that being said, we're just going to go ahead and move on to the next tip. So the second tip is kind of just a quick one, and just ignore Lou Dort as the background. Just wanted to give some love to my boy Lou Dort for MVP this year, by the way. But anyway, it's going to be to check the NBA schedule. And while the schedule hasn't been released for the entire season yet, like the instant it does, you need to go on there, track the games, and see like how many games each team is playing per week. Because at the end of the season, if you're stuck in like a tough playoff matchup and you need like every point matters, if you have like Luka Doncic or someone only playing like 2 games, then like you're pretty screwed. So I definitely check the NBA schedule in advance. This is an advantage you'll gain on a lot of your league because not a lot of people think to do this. And while it does take some time, I will admit, it's just really worth it in the end if your main goal is winning your fantasy league because like then you're going to know which players to go after, what waiver wire pickups to make, what like week in advance, and it just really helps to have a plan of attack, honestly. So this is just like a small tip just that I don't think a lot of people are aware of, and if you do this, you'll definitely get a hand up on your league. So I definitely go ahead and check out the NBA schedule as soon as it's released. And lastly, it's going to be to handle your injuries properly. So what I mean by this is that if you're in playoff contention right now, then you might be able to get away with having someone like D'Angelo Russell on your team, but if it's looking like you're not going to make the playoffs, then like there's no reason for you to keep someone like D'Lo on your team as he's going to be missing at least 4 to 6 weeks. So like I hate when people keep injured players on the roster when they don't have a shot of making the playoffs because like making the playoffs should be your only goal and you need to do like whatever you can to make that happen. So there's no point in keeping injured players there. And similarly, if you see injured players on your waiver wire and like you're pretty confident that you are going to make the playoffs, then it might be worth picking them up and putting them on your IR or even just keeping them on your lineup if you're that confident you're going to make the playoffs. Picking up someone like Yusef Nurkic, who's been dropped in a lot of leagues, or like Jaren Jackson Jr. could really like swing the tide for your team and really decide if you're going to win a fantasy playoff series or not, honestly, because those are guys that can be really good producers when they're on the court, and once they get recover from injury, like if you picked them up early, then it's just a really good chance that they're going to perform for you well past expectations, and they might just be a better option than whatever waiver wire player you have on your team right now. So yeah, like I said, this is a conditional one, so you really just have to know how your team's looking, whether you're looking like you're going to be able to make the playoffs, whether you need to desperately make some moves to make the playoffs. And yeah, that's going to sum up the video pretty much. I mean, if we look back through things, trade for competitive players, check the NBA schedule, and make sure you handle your injuries properly. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe for fantasy and NBA content, and thanks for watching, and I hope you all have a great day.